The royal lineage was written not only in blood, but also in an ancient curse. A curse that had shadowed the family's destiny for generations. King Theron, awaiting a daughter after 12 sons, worried for the future of the kingdom. For prophecy foretold that the throne would only reach its true power through a female heir. Thus, in the final days of the queen, when the queen learned of her husband's terrible plan, her heart turned to ice. Secretly, she showed her youngest son, Benjamin, the 12 small coffins their father had prepared and explained the impending danger. Benjamin devised a plan to save his brothers. The queen would hoist a white banner if she bore a son and a crimson banner if she bore a daughter. The crimson banner would be the signal for them to flee the kingdom and seek refuge in the depths of the forest. When the birth occurred, even the sky darkened with sorrow. The queen gave birth to a daughter with a golden star on her forehead. This was the sign that the prophecy had been fulfilled, but it also meant that the fate of her 12 sons was sealed. With a shattered heart, the queen climbed the tower and with trembling hands hoisted the crimson banner. Benjamin and his brothers, seeing the ominous color from their lookout at the edge of the forest, fled the kingdom's cursed borders without a moment's hesitation. The 12 brothers built a new life for themselves in a magical hut deep within the forest. They survived by hunting and through Benjamin's skillful cooking. However, the pain of losing their kingdom because of their sister had left a deep wound in their hearts. So much so that they swore an oath among themselves. They would kill every girl they encountered in the name of their vow of vengeance. This oath had become a part of their cursed destiny. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, the young princess Elara was growing up. Her mother and father had hidden the existence of her 12 older brothers from her, but the whispers circulating in the kingdom and the constant sadness in her mother's eyes fueled Elara's curiosity. When she turned 16, she accidentally found 12 small boys' shirts hidden by her mother and begged her to tell the truth. The queen, unable to bear it any longer, told Elara the story of her brothers, her father's curse, and the betrayal of the crimson banner. When Elara learned the truth, her heart filled with guilt and determination. She felt responsible for her brother's fate and vowed to set out to bring them back. She took only the 12 small shirts with her and set off into the depths of the forest. Her goal was to find her brothers and lift the curse upon them, no matter the cost. After a long and perilous journey, Elara finally found the magical hut. Inside, she found Benjamin. Benjamin was astonished to see the beautiful girl in royal clothes with a star on her forehead. Elara explained who she was and that she had come to lift the curse on her brothers. Benjamin warned her, reminding her of his brother's vow of vengeance. But Elara's determination and readiness for sacrifice softened Benjamin's heart. Benjamin hid Elara under a tub while waiting for his 11 brothers to return. When his brothers returned from the hunt, Benjamin told them he had encountered a girl, but that she was innocent and they should not break their oath. At Benjamin's insistence, the brothers agreed to temporarily suspend their vow. When Benjamin brought Elara out of hiding, the 11 brothers were filled with a mixture of astonishment and remorse upon seeing their sister, shining with the golden star on her forehead. Elara began searching for a way to completely lift the curse on her brothers. An old, wise woman told her there was only one way. She must neither speak nor laugh for 7 years. If she uttered a single word before the time was up, her brothers would remain ravens forever. Elara took this terrible vow without hesitation. Her brothers were horrified by her sacrifice, but seeing Elara's determination, they reluctantly accepted. However, Elara's sacrifice brought a new danger. One day, a king hunting in the forest found Elara. The golden star on her forehead and her silent, mysterious beauty captivated the king. Although Elara could not speak, she nodded her assent to the king's marriage proposal. Her brothers watched their sister step into this new life with bittersweet joy, knowing that their only hope for the curse to be lifted depended on her silence. The king's mother was a wicked queen, and she was suspicious of Elara's silence and mysterious past. She accused Elara of being a witch who had brought misfortune to the kingdom. As the years passed, the queen's slanders sowed seeds of doubt in the king's heart. Elara could not defend herself because she had to maintain her silence. This situation foreshadowed the calamities that would befall Elara in the later stages of the story. Chapter 2: The Well of Mother Hula. Lara's story showed that the curse on the kingdom was not limited to the fate of her 12 brothers. In the neighboring lands of the kingdom lived Elara's stepsister, Lyra, and her stepmother, Morwen. Morwen pampered her own daughter, Lyra, while despising Seraphina, the daughter from Elara's mother's first marriage. Seraphina, like Elara's mother, was gentle-spirited and diligent, but lived under the tyranny of her stepmother. Every day, Morwen sent Seraphina to a roadside well to spin thread until her fingers bled. One day, Seraphina's blood-soaked spindle slipped from her hand and fell into the dark waters of the well. Fearing her stepmother's wrath, Seraphina rushed home to explain the situation. Morwen, mercilessly, sent Seraphina back to the well to retrieve the spindle. In despair, Seraphina threw herself into the depths of the well. Seraphina found herself not among cold stones, but in a sunlit meadow. This was the realm of the legendary Mother Hula. As she walked, she saw an oven full of golden loaves of bread. The loaves cried out, "Take us out, or we shall burn!" Seraphina, with compassion, pulled the loaves out of the oven and saved them from burning. At her, she came across an apple tree whose branches were bent low with fruit. The tree pleaded, shake me, for all my apples are ripe." Seraphina shook the tree with all her might, and the apples fell like a rain of gold. She gathered them all, leaving not a single one on the grass. This showed her pure heart and diligent spirit. Finally, Seraphina reached the house of Mother Hula, an old woman with frighteningly large teeth. Mother Hula took Seraphina into her service and taught her the household chores, especially shaking her bed. "When the feathers fly, it snows in the world above," Mother Hula explained. Seraphina served faithfully and joyfully, shaking the bed so vigorously every day that the feathers flew like winter snow. After a long time, Seraphina began to miss her home. She expressed her wish to leave to Mother Hula. Mother Hula was pleased with Seraphina's faithfulness. She led her to a great door, and as Seraphina passed through, a shower of gold rained down upon her from head to toe. This was the reward for her diligence. Mother Hula also returned the spindle she had once dropped into the well. When Seraphina returned home, the golden glow on her astonished everyone. Her stepmother, Morwen, seeing this wealth, was filled with greed and wanted her own daughter, Lyra, to gain the same fortune. Lyra reluctantly went to the well, pricked her finger on a thorny hedge, threw the spindle into the well, and then jumped in. Lyra also reached Mother Hula's realm, but unlike Seraphina, she ignored the pleas of the bread in the oven and refused the apple tree's request to be shaken, fearing an apple might fall on her head. When she reached Mother Hula's house, she agreed to serve only with the dream of wealth. Lyra worked well on the first day, but grew lazy on the second, and was completely indifferent on the third. She refused to shake the bed because the flying feathers bothered her. Mother Hula grew tired of her laziness and allowed her to leave. Lyra passed through the door, expecting the shower of gold, but instead of gold, a shower of black, sticky pitch was poured over her. This was the punishment for her laziness and greed. Lyra returned home covered in pitch. The pitch clung to her like a second skin, and no amount of washing could remove it. This incident quickly spread throughout the kingdom and was seen as a sign of the curse of greed and laziness. Serafina's story represented the moral compass in Elara's quest. Sacrifice and diligence were rewarded, while greed and laziness were punished. Chapter 3. The Fearless Heart. Elara's silence and Serafina's golden reward had created a balance in the kingdom. However, the curse on the kingdom was not limited to family dramas. It also affected the realm itself. On the northern border of the kingdom, an abandoned castle. Legend had it that this castle was where the curse was most intense, and a great treasure was hidden within. The king, seeking to unravel Elara's silence and mystery, decided to send her to this castle. The king promised Elara that if she spent 3 nights in the cursed castle, he would find a sorcerer who could lift her vow of silence. Elara was willing to take this risk to lift the curse on her brothers. However, the king's true intention was to create a moment of fear that would break Elara's silence, thus proving his mother's claims. When Elara entered the castle, she only had a fire-starting kit, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with a knife. These were the lifeless items the king had given her. Elara spent the first night by a fireplace, starting a fire. Towards midnight, 2 large black cats emerged from a corner and cried, "Meow! How cold we are!" The cats offered Elara a game of cards. Elara silently indicated that their claws were too long and offered to trim them. When the cats extended their paws, Elara pinned them to the cutting board and neutralized them with her knife. This showed that she was not only gentle, but also intelligent and fearless. The second night brought a greater commotion. At midnight, half a man fell down the chimney with a crash. Elara frowned and gestured, "That's too little. Where is the other half?" Then, the other half of the man fell down, and the 2 pieces joined to form a frightful figure. This figure tried to push Elara from her seat, but Elara pushed him back and held her ground. Later, 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls fell, and these figures began to play 9-pins with them. Elara joined them, but indicated that the balls were not round. Using the turning lathe, she rounded the skulls and played with them. This showed that she reacted with curiosity and practical intelligence rather than fear. On the third night, 6 tall men brought a coffin. Elara opened the coffin and saw the cold corpse inside. She took the corpse into her lap to warm it, but when that didn't work, she gestured, "2 people warm each other in bed," and carried the corpse to the bed. The corpse came to life and tried to strangle Elara. Elara threw him back into the coffin and closed the lid. Finally, a terrifying figure with a long white beard, the source of the castle's curse, appeared. This was one of the ancient spirits behind the curse on the realm. The figure threatened to kill Elara. Elara silently indicated that she wanted to test their strength. The figure led her to a blacksmith's forge and split an anvil in 2 with an axe. Elara gestured that she could do better. As the figure approached Elara, Elara snatched the axe, split the anvil in 2, and trapped the figure's long white beard inside the anvil. Then, she beat the figure with an iron bar until the figure gave up and showed her the location of the treasure. Elara had lifted the castle's curse and found a great treasure. However, when she returned to the king, she still did not utter a single word. The king was filled with astonishment and admiration. Elara's fearlessness had proven her innocence, but her silence was still a mystery. Elara still had not learned what it was to shudder. Chapter 4. The Gallant Deception. Elara's silent heroism quickly spread throughout the kingdom, earning her the nickname the Fearless Queen. However, this fame attracted the attention of two giants living in the northern mountains who were threatening the kingdom's resources. The king sent Elara on another dangerous mission, asking her to defeat these giants. Meanwhile, Elara's path crossed with the kingdom's most unusual hero, Finch, also known as 7 at One Blow. Finch was actually a small tailor, but one day, after killing 7 flies that had gathered on the jamb on his workbench with a single blow, he had turned the incident into a heroic saga. He had embroidered the words 7 at One Blow on his self-made belt and had deceived the entire realm with this lie. When Elara heard of Finch's exaggerated reputation, she immediately understood that his true strength lay in his cunning. She decided to use Finch's wit to defeat the giants. Elara led Finch to the mountains where the giants lived. When Finch encountered the giants, he challenged them by showing the inscription on his belt. The giants were impressed by Finch's claim of 7 at one blow, despite his small size. Finch began to outsmart the giants with clever tricks. When one giant asked him to squeeze a stone to draw water, Finch squeezed the soft cheese in his pocket, letting the whey run out, astonishing the giants. Later, when a giant asked him to throw a stone as high as the one the giant had thrown into the sky, Finch released a bird from his pocket. The bird soared into the sky and disappeared. Finch gestured, "The stone I threw went too far to ever return." The giants began to fear Finch's power and invited him to their den. Finch hid in a corner instead of sleeping in the giant's bed. At midnight, one of the giants struck Finch's bed with an iron club, thinking he had killed him. When Finch appeared alive and cheerful in the morning, the giants fled in terror. Finch had defeated the giants with his wit. Elara silently watched the event and understood that Finch's cunning was a more valuable weapon than brute force. When the king heard that the giants were defeated, he feared Finch's power and devised a new plan to get rid of him. He ordered Finch to capture a unicorn that was terrorizing the kingdom's forests. Finch completed this mission with a clever trick as well. By hiding behind a tree, he tricked the unicorn into impaling its horn into the tree, thus capturing the animal. The king gave Finch one last mission to get rid of him: to capture a wild boar that was damaging the kingdom's fields. Finch chased the boar toward a chapel, quickly jumped out of a window when the boar entered, and closed the door. The boar was trapped inside the chapel. Finch successfully completed these missions, and the king was forced to keep his promise. Finch married the princess and received half the kingdom. However, one night, Finch's wife heard her husband mumbling in his sleep, "Now, boy, sew me that vest, patch those breeches," and realized her husband was actually a tailor. Instigated by the Queen Mother, she planned to have her husband arrested by the royal guards and sent far away by ship. When Finch learned of the plot, he resorted to one last trick. The night his wife left the door ajar, he loudly shouted in his sleep, "I killed 7 at one blow, defeated 2 giants, captured a unicorn, and trapped a boar. Should I be afraid of the guards outside my door?" The guards, hearing these words, fled in terror. Finch protected his throne through his wit and deception. When Elara heard Finch's story, she realized that lifting the curse required not only sacrifice, but also the power of the right word, or silence, spoken at the right time. Chapter 5. The Robber's Feast. Elara's silence and Finch's cunning represented different aspects of the curse on the kingdom. However, a more tangible and darker danger lurked in the heart of the realm. Elara's presence in the palace had further fueled the hatred of the king's mother. The Queen Mother secretly made a pact with a gang of robbers operating on the kingdom's borders to eliminate Elara. Meanwhile, a wealthy miller in the kingdom had promised his daughter, Lena, to a man who appeared wealthy and respectable, Valerius. Lena did not like Valerius. Every time she saw him, she felt a coldness in her heart. Valerius invited Lena to his house deep in the forest. Trusting her instincts, Lena filled her pockets with peas and lentils to leave a trail along the way. When Lena reached Valerius's house, she found the house gloomy and deserted. There was no one in the house, only a bird hanging in a cage. The bird whispered to Lena, turn back, thou pretty bride. Within this house thou must not bide, for here do evil things betide." As Lena wandered through the house, she found an old woman in a cellar. The old woman told her that Valerius was actually the leader of a gang of robbers and that they planned to cut her up and eat her. The old woman hid Lena behind a large cask. Soon after, the robbers returned home, bringing another young woman with them. The robbers, in a drunken frenzy, killed and dismembered the woman. Lena, watching this horrific scene, trembled in terror. One of the robbers, having difficulty removing a gold ring from the victim's finger, cut off the finger with an axe. The severed finger fell behind the cask into Lena's lap. The old woman prevented the robbers from searching by inviting them to dinner. At night, when the robbers fell asleep, the old woman and Lena escaped from the house. The peas and lentils Lena had dropped along the way had sprouted, shining in the moonlight and showing them the path. Lena returned to her father's mill and recounted the horror she had experienced. When the wedding day arrived, Valerius and his gang of robbers came to the mill. During the meal, Lena was asked to tell a story. Breaking her silence, Lena recounted her experience as a dream. At each stage of the story, she looked at Valerius and said, "Sweetheart, the dream is not yet ended." At the end of the story, she showed the severed finger and ring that had fallen into her lap. Valerius and his gang were brought to justice. Lena's wit and courage had saved not only her own life, but also the kingdom from a great danger. When Elara heard of this event, she understood the power of not only silent sacrifice, but also the truth spoken at the right time to lift the curse. Lena's story emphasized the importance of justice and truth in Elara's quest. Chapter 6. The Fiddler's Justice. Elara's silence and Lena's spoken truth had revealed the moral dimensions of the curse on the kingdom. However, the social injustice of the realm was another factor that allowed the curse to take root. This injustice was embodied in the story of Tobias, one of the most honest and diligent people in the kingdom. Tobias had served a rich man honestly for 3 years, but had received only 3 farthings in return. Tobias happily set out with this money, and on the way he met an old dwarf who granted him 3 wishes. Tobias used his wishes very wisely. First, a rifle that would hit everything he aimed at. Second, a fiddle that would compel everyone who heard it to dance. And third, the ability to have any request granted. As Tobias continued on his way, he encountered a Jew named Mordecai, one of the most greedy and deceitful merchants in the kingdom. Mordecai was fascinated by the sound of a bird, but could not catch it. Tobias shot the bird with his rifle, and the bird fell into a thorny bush. Tobias asked Mordecai to retrieve the bird. As Mordecai entered the bush, Tobias began to play his fiddle. The magical sound of the fiddle compelled Mordecai to dance wildly in the bush. The thorns tore his clothes and injured him. Mordecai offered Tobias a purse full of gold to stop. Tobias took the gold and continued on his way. Mordecai, filled with rage, rushed to the town to bring Tobias to justice. Upon Mordecai's complaint, Tobias was arrested and accused of theft. The judge did not believe Tobias's story and sentenced him to be hanged. As Tobias was led to the gallows, he made one last wish: to play his fiddle one last time. The judge, due to Tobias's third wish ability, could not refuse this request. When Tobias began to play his fiddle, everyone, including the judge, the clerk, the hangman, and even Mordecai, began to dance wildly. The dancing was so frantic that people were crashing into each other and screaming. The judge, out of breath, shouted, "I will spare your life, just stop playing!" Tobias stopped playing and demanded that Mordecai confess the truth. Mordecai confessed that he had stolen the gold, and Tobias's innocence was proven. Mordecai was hanged for his own crimes. Tobias had delivered justice with his own hands, momentarily alleviating the curse of injustice on the kingdom. When Elara heard of this event, she realized that lifting the curse required not only sacrifice, but also the power of the people and just governance. Chapter 7. The Gluttony of the Beast. Elara's silence, Seraphina's golden reward, Lena's spoken truth, and Tobias's fiddle-wrought justice had revealed different facets of the curse on the kingdom. However, the most fundamental source of the curse was greed and insatiability. This theme was embodied in the story of two creatures living in the kingdom's forests, indirectly influencing Elara's quest: the cruel wolf and the cunning fox. The wolf was the cruel master of the forest, forcing the fox to serve him. The fox was tired of the wolf's insatiable appetite and sought ways to be rid of him. One evening, the wolf commanded the fox to find him food. The fox mentioned 2 lambs on a nearby farm. The fox cunningly stole one lamb and brought it to the wolf. The wolf devoured the lamb in one gulp, but his greed made him demand the second lamb as well. When the wolf tried to steal the second lamb, his clumsiness led to his capture, and he was severely beaten by the farmers. When the fox came to the wolf was groaning in pain. The fox, with a sly expression, said, "Why are you so greedy? 1 lamb should have been enough for you." The next day, the wolf's hunger returned. This time, the fox suggested pancakes cooking in a house. The fox stole 6 pancakes and brought them to the wolf. The wolf quickly ate the pancakes, but was still not satisfied and demanded more. When he jumped to grab the dish, he broke it and woke up the household. The wolf was caught again and beaten even worse. On the 3rd day, the fox led the wolf to a barrel of salted meat in a butcher's cellar. The wolf lost control and began to gorge on the meat. The fox, meanwhile, kept checking if he could still fit through the small hole at the cellar entrance. The fox warned the wolf as he grew fatter, but the wolf did not listen. When the farmer heard the noises from the cellar, he came with a club. The fox slipped through the hole one last time and escaped. The wolf, however, was too fat and got stuck in the hole. The farmer beat the wolf to death with the club. The fox fled into the forest, rejoicing at being free from his greedy master. When Elara heard this story, she realized that the curse on the kingdom was not just a magical curse, but also the greed and insatiability of the people and rulers. The wolf's fate was a reflection of the greed of King Theron and Queen Mother. Elara understood that to lift the curse, she needed not only sacrifice and wit, but also to restore a moral balance in the kingdom. Chapter 8. The Divine Judgment. Greed and injustice were the cornerstones of the curse on the kingdom. This injustice culminated in the story of 2 inhabitants of the kingdom, the poor man and the rich man. Legend had it that once, God himself, wandering the earth, was looking for a place to spend the night. God first knocked on the rich man's door. The rich man, seeing God's simple clothes, refused to let him in and rudely turned him away. Then God went to the poor man's small cottage. The poor man and his wife welcomed God with great hospitality. They gave him the little food they had and their own bed, while they slept on the floor. In the morning, God granted the poor man 3 wishes for his generosity. The poor man first wished for eternal happiness and health. When he couldn't think of a third wish, God suggested he wish for a new house instead of his old cottage. The poor man agreed, and his old cottage instantly transformed into a beautiful new house. When the rich man saw this miraculous transformation, he was consumed with envy. He immediately mounted his horse and caught up with them. God also granted the rich man 3 wishes, but warned him, "Your wishes will not bring you any benefit." The rich man ignored the warning and began to think about wishing for the greatest wealth. When his thoughts were constantly interrupted by his horse's restlessness, the rich man became angry and uttered his first wish without thinking. "I wish my horse's neck would break." The horse instantly collapsed and died. As the rich man pondered his second wish, he was annoyed by the saddle hurting his back and his wife sitting comfortably at home. Angrily, he wished, "I wish my wife was sitting on this saddle and couldn't get off." The rich man was forced to use his third wish to free his wife from the saddle. Thus, he had wasted all his wishes, lost his horse, and gained no wealth. The poor man, meanwhile, continued to live happily, healthily, and peacefully in his new home. When Elara heard this story, she realized that the curse was not just a magical curse, but also a divine judgment. The curse on the kingdom was a result of the greed and mercilessness of the rulers and the wealthy. Elara understood that to lift the curse, she needed not only sacrifice and wit, but also to restore true justice and mercy in the kingdom. Chapter 9. The Ultimate Sacrifice. Elara's silent sacrifice had revealed the moral and social dimensions of the curse on the kingdom. However, the most personal and painful aspect of the curse resonated with the theme of sacrifice and rebirth in the story of the girl without hands. This story was a prophecy of Elara's own quest and ultimate sacrifice. Once, a miller made a pact with the devil. In exchange for making the miller rich, the devil demanded what was behind the mill. The miller thought it was just an apple tree, but the devil wanted his daughter, who was standing behind the mill. The miller's daughter was a pious and pure girl. When the devil could not take the girl, he forced the miller to cut off his daughter's hands. The girl accepted her father's request, and her hands were cut off. The devil could no longer touch the girl. The girl, with her severed hands tied to her back, began to wander the world. She came to a king's garden and, with the help of an angel, entered the garden. There, she ate only 1 pear. The king found the girl, was impressed by her purity, and married her, having silver hands made for her. When the king went to war, the queen gave birth to a son. The devil changed the letters sent to the king's mother, spreading the lie that the king had ordered the queen and her child to be killed. The king's mother, instead of killing the queen, sent her and her child into the forest. The queen lived in a house protected by an angel for 7 years in the forest. During this time, her severed hands grew back due to her piety. After 7 years, the king found his wife and child. The queen proved her identity by showing her silver hands, and the family was reunited. When Elara heard this story, she realized that her own silence and sacrifice were only the beginning of the ultimate sacrifice required to lift the curse on her brothers. The regrowth of the girl without hands' hands was a symbol of rebirth and hope. Elara, at the end of her 7 years of silence, would be ready to sacrifice her own hands to lift the curse on the kingdom. Chapter 10: The Unbroken Thread. Elara's 7 years of silence were about to end. However, the king's mother made one last plan to break Elara's silence and accuse her of witchcraft. The queen mother declared Elara a witch and condemned her to be burned just 1 hour before her 7-year period was over. Elara was tied to the stake, and the flames had begun to lick her skirts. At that very moment, her 7-year period ended. A rushing sound was heard in the sky, and 12 ravens swooped down toward the square. As they landed, the ravens transformed into 12 handsome young men, Elara's 12 brothers. The brothers extinguished the fire and rescued Elara. Elara spoke for the first time in 7 years and told the king the whole story: the curse, her silence, and her brother's sacrifice. The king rejoiced when he learned of his wife's innocence. The queen mother was judged and punished for her crimes. The kingdom was freed from the curse. Elara had not only saved her brothers, but also restored justice, mercy, and moral balance to the kingdom. Elara had finally learned what it was to shudder. It was not the shock of cold water, but the deep and complex emotion of being human. A combination of love and fear, sacrifice and rebirth. The curse was lifted, but the stories would forever remind the kingdom of the fractured thread.